Vamos a dar paso a la conferencia de la doctora Inga Dora Sigfúsdóttir, directora investigadora del Modelo de Islandia Youth in Iceland y Planet Youth, quien nos presentará el Modelo de Islandia, Prevención del uso de sustancias en adolescentes, un programa basado en la evidencia. Les recuerdo que tienen en su semblanza, en sus programas de mano la semblanza de nuestros expositores para poder acortar el tiempo y poder dar paso a la presentación de la doctora. Bienvenida.
Dear colleagues, thanks for inviting us to this wonderful forum, and this is such a great work that you are starting here. But in a world full of darkness, I bring you a touch of brightness. We actually can prevent bad things from happening to young people. In Iceland, substance use has been decreasing constantly since 1998. And this has happened when drug use has been increasing in many other European cities, as we see here. And if you're thinking, like many of the ones that we have been talking to in recent years, it must be because Iceland is a manageable small society, an island society up in the north, and you're all kind of rather strange there. I show you this. Substance use among youth in Malta, an island society, a small manageable society. Substance use among young people in Liechtenstein, also a very small society, in comparison to substance use among Icelandic adolescents. And some of our neighbors, these are the Nordic countries. You would think that they are similar, but if we look at heavy episodic drinking in the last 30 days, we see that for adolescents in Iceland, 15-year-old adolescents, 8% become drunk in the past 30 days. In Denmark, our next-door neighbors, 56% of 15-year-old adolescents have become drunk in the past 30 days. So today, we are here with 5% of adolescents having become drunk in the past 30 days. The other bars, the blue bars, are our collaborative cities in Europe. But a while back, we used to be here. I need someone to help me with this. This is not working right. So, okay, I'll give you a sign, okay? We used to be here with 42% of 15-year-old adolescents having become drunk in the past 30 days. That was when downtown Reykjavik looked like this. The clock is 3 a.m. On a Saturday night, so it's a June night, so it's bright, but the downtown area is full of adolescents, intoxicated adolescents. This was in 1997. 20 years later, Iceland makes the world news. It says how Iceland got teens to say no to drugs. I want to tell you the story, what happened between these two time points. So the story starts in 1997. 42% of 15-year-old adolescents have become drunk in the past 30 days. 23% are daily smokers. 17% have used hashish once or more in their lives. Through the 90s, substance use had been increasing constantly, and I tell you, it was not as if nothing was being done. There were numerous prevention projects being carried out, most of them focusing on educating adolescents about the negative sides of substance use, teaching them to say no to drugs, all having one thing in common: they were not based on evidence. None of them using research as a foundation for the work. So we obviously needed a new strategy. At that time, a group of researchers, policymakers, and practitioners working with children and adolescents decided to gather their strengths, try out a new approach, and see whether it might be possible to reverse this negative upward trend in substance use among young people. And I tell you, what we started doing there in 1997 reminds me a lot of what you have been able to create here in your work. So the project was called Youth in Iceland, and it had 3 core elements. First and foremost, we wanted to base what we were going to do on evidence. We thought, if we're going to affect substance use, we need to know what predicts it. Far too many policies and prevention efforts had been written and carried out with no or even negative results, since they were not based on understanding and knowledge of the people or the issues they were supposed to affect. They were not based on solid research. Our second core element was using a community-based approach with focus on changing the social circumstances of young people, and through that, affecting their behavior. Because we need to keep in mind that attitudes and behavior do not necessarily match. Young people we know that it's negative to use substances, and they may think it's not so good, and they want not to do it, but they still do it. So it's important to affect their behavior. And the last one, the last core element of the Youth in Iceland program was to create a dialogue between researchers, policymakers, and practitioners working with children and adolescents. We wanted to change what we believed looked too much like this, where research, policy, and practice are 3 separate aspects, with scientists publishing their findings, not knowing and not often caring whether they come of any use in society, into this, where people combine their efforts and knowledge to create a system that can benefit young people. First and foremost, we needed to understand indeed what we were dealing with. We needed to understand young people and the world they live in. And let me tell you, we learned a lot, both from the studies that we started carrying out and also from studies that were carried out elsewhere. In many ways, our findings were in accordance with the logic of delinquency theories and studies carried out in other countries. In some ways, Icelandic circumstances were unique and needed an Icelandic tailored prevention policy. For example, we learned that Icelandic adolescents, along with their Scandinavian and British peers, consumed alcohol differently than other European teenagers. Whereas 1%, 2%, or 3% of 15-year-olds in southern parts of Europe had become drunk 10 times or more, the proportion among their Icelandic peers was over 20%. Similarly, unwelcome incidents like accidents or injuries related to alcohol consumption were more common in Iceland than in other European countries. A part of the explanation was a very liberal view towards adolescent drinking that was found in Iceland at the time and needed to be changed. We learned more. We learned that substance use follows cohorts, a cohort that measures above average in substance use at the age of 14, keeps up the use through high school, and is also heavily using substances at the age of 18. However, a 14-year-old cohort that starts lower also ends adolescence at a lower proportion. The lesson for us and for policy making from this finding was it is very important to reach them early, to postpone the moment in the lives of young people when they have their first drink. We need to reach them early and reach the parents of young kids. So as I mentioned at the start, adolescent attitudes and behavior do not necessarily match. Policymakers made use of these findings by stressing the importance of affecting their behavior, not only their attitudes. So in recent years, less emphasis has been put on solely informing adolescents at school about the negative sides of substance use, but instead more energy has been investing in activating teenagers in organized youth work in sport, for example. We specifically looked at what are the factors related to substance use. What are the risk and protective factors? Our studies revealed that affiliations with family, peer group effects, and types of recreational activities available are the strongest predictors of the path taken by adolescents. Like studies elsewhere had shown, the influence of the peer group is negative, no matter how we look at it. Having friends that drink, smoke hashish, or use other drugs increases the likelihood of similar behavior among the adolescent, him or herself. On the contrary, the influence of extracurricular activities is beneficial. The more time adolescents spend in organized youth work or sports, the less likely they are to smoke, to drink alcohol, or to use other substances. The more time adolescents spend together in unstructured activities, away from guides and role models who encourage youth to invest in conventional culture, the more likely they are to be willing to partake in substance use. The role of parents is vital. We found out that there were 3 parental factors that seemed to be of most importance. First, perceived emotional support. Second, monitoring, positive monitoring. Adolescents whose parents know where they are and with whom are less likely to use drugs than adolescents that are monitored less. And the third key family factor was the quantity of time spent with adolescents. So the amount of time that parents and adolescents spend together is a key predictor. The more time they spend outside of school with their family, the less likely they are to use drugs. This finding was very important in Icelandic circumstances because it has been measured that if Icelanders have a choice of more leisure or more work, they choose more work. So a nation that takes pride in working long hours and counts every spare hour as an hour wasted needed to hear that actually the amount of time that we spend with our kids is a key protective factor. The quality time concept that we had liked to believe in was not working as we had hoped. So, and I tell you, our findings became even more important when, with new statistical methods, we realized that not only did they work on individual and family basis, but also on school and neighborhood level. So to explain that, we see that in schools where parents keep close contact by knowing the friends of their kids and the parents of their friends, for example, the kids are in general less likely to use substances, and it does not necessarily matter whether their own parents are a part of this group or not. This was very important for us to find out because it had been said to us, you know, when you're going out to parental meetings, you're only meeting the parents that you need not talk to. The parents that you need to meet are at home. They're not showing up. So it was extremely important to find out that we need not have all the parents involved. We need just to form a group, a strong group of parents, and all the kids in the school will benefit. So all these findings and more were used as a foundation for a comprehensive prevention program that consisted of multiple small and large-scale projects on different levels of society. By putting less emphasis on education about substances or teaching them to say no to drugs, but instead focusing on changing the social environment of youth and through that affecting their behavior. NGOs were formed. Their efforts sought to promote collaboration between parents and schools, to encourage parents to spend more time with their adolescent children. The focus was on reaching out to parents with clear messages related to the findings of the studies. For example, on the importance of spending time together, that all teenagers should be at home by 10 o'clock in the evenings, and that unsupervised adolescent gatherings should be avoided. At the neighborhood level, an example of a project was Parental Watch, where parents formed groups during weekend nights and took walks around neighborhoods to, in a friendly way, monitor the behavior of youngsters. And at the community level, participation in organized youth work and sport was encouraged by offering adolescents prepaid cards to partake in structured activities. At the national level, media campaigns were launched. The president of Iceland started something called the Prevention Day, where he went out every fall for one day to the schools, visited the schools with clear messages back. 1 hour a day with family is important. Some organized youth work and activities should be encouraged. And to the adolescents, we did not say, you're never going to drink alcohol. We said, just don't do it now. Wait. Wait until you're 18 and then see whether you want to do it or not. And soon, things surely started changing. I don't know. One more. Perfect. Now we see that adolescents are spending more time with their parents, as we see here, than in 1997 when we started, both on weekends and working days. Monitoring by parents has increased. Adolescents are coming home earlier in the evenings, and they are getting more support from their parents. Participation in organized youth work and sport has increased, and unsupervised gatherings are less likely than before. And the best part is, substance use has gone down dramatically. So for the past few years, we have been so lucky to be able to work with our colleagues in several European cities through the Youth in Europe program. And one more. This is where we are working. Push the button, one more. Yeah. And the good news is that the model is transferable. If we look at findings from a city in a country that has quite a different culture than Iceland, and I take an example of Latvia, Riga in Latvia, we see that using the same model, we get similar results in different cultures. So what started as youth in Iceland kept on as youth in Europe, and is now heading into a new phase that we call Planet Youth, where we are figuring out how to make similar principle work in different places by mobilizing local societies, by creating circumstances that can influence the lives of young people in a positive way, and most importantly, by basing the work on facts. Because, dear colleagues, we need this work to be a joint global effort. In a world where there are practically no cultural or national boundaries anymore, and cyberspace is without limits, teenagers are mobile in more than one sense of the word. In this kind of world, we know that it is only through joining forces, by learning from each other, and by basing our work on trustworthy research that we will succeed in fighting substance use. It is not an easy task, but based on research, we know it can be done by guardianship, with community attachment, and informal social control. We need to realize we will not change anything by single project solutions. Prevention needs to be consistent and comprehensive, not one short campaign, but more of a quiet revolution. Thank you.